Hello, everyone, beloved family, blessed beings of light. Thank you to this episode, the audience of this episode of the 13th Harmonic. I am here with wonderful Susie Beiler, who founded the Creation Temple. She's amazing on the didgeridoo. I'm just going to let her give a brief couple of sentences what best describes you at this current present moment, Susie.
Oh boy.
Infinity into a finite container. Go.
Go. Three, two, one. In this present moment, what I am finding is my resilience and my strength. In the chaos of this planet, typically my life is, I know that that's out there, but it's not usually so close to my inner world. But there's been some disruption in my personal life that's, kind of taken me by surprise. And so I'm just being really admiring my strength and resilience, because it's something that totally came out of the blue and totally unexpected, and kind of thrown me for a little loop. And so as I make the choice to show up for my soul mission and to show up for what I believe is important, um, I choose not to give my energy and my power to the external circumstance. And this comes with years and years and years of practice. Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay, we can go there.
You asked what was present for me right
no,
now.
yeah, no, it was that, and it was also what my team was asking me to ask about it. I'm like, that's in no way related to what she just talked about, and they're like, just ask. So with the didgeridoo, in order to play that kind of instrument, you kind of have to be good at breathing,
Yeah.
don't you?
Yeah.
How does that work in a nutshell? What was that like training yourself for that, and what does it feel like?
Yeah. Well, there's a couple of things that I'll say about it. One is that I had to rewire my brain because circular breathing is a different way of breathing. It's not something that we do naturally. So there was definitely a period of kind of letting go of the thoughts about how to breathe and to and to learn how to do it a different way. And the other piece is that I felt this resonance with that instrument at my soul level, at the level of my soul. And so when I first started playing it, I knew that I had played the instrument before in other lifetimes, other experiences. And so I called upon that knowing of how to do it, and it came somewhat naturally to me. I did have a teacher that helped me, but when I got my first didgeridoo, I was just sitting at home practicing, and all of a sudden I started to do it. And I was like, "Oh, I just did it!" And then I went into my head, and I'm like, "What did I just do?" And it wasn't something that my head could, recreate or tell me what to do. Just, like in that flow of letting go, I started to do it. So it is a brain rewiring, though. You definitely have to let go of your ideas of how to breathe and reconfigure some things in the brain in order to do it.
Okay, and how many solar rotations have you been through before that experience happened for you? How many Earth years?
Before I learned how to play the
Yeah,
didge,
when you picked that up and tried that, how old were you?
I guess I was 36, I think.
Okay, a nine.
I've been playing for about 5.5 years, a little more than 5.5 years. So
Have you ever played the bagpipes?
no.
I hear they've got a similar style of breathing in order to play that instrument. So
Yeah.
maybe one of these days, though.
I mean, I don't know. I don't have a strong resonance with that, you know. It was that primal Aboriginal, you know, deep, uh, like earthy tone, you know, the vibration and the tone and the frequency that comes from that instrument. That's what I resonated with. It's very grounding.
Yeah, it seems like that style of instrument would elicit more of the lower vibrational the strong grounding resonances, you know, the 108 hertz, the 432, maybe on the high end, but that translated down into the lower octaves of the, you know, the reds and the oranges and yellows, the earthy Sedona tones, I guess.
Well, I mean, honestly, I connect with more of those higher frequencies here in Sedona.
Hmm.
It's the barefoot hiking and the didgeridoo that helps keep me grounded.
Yeah, it's like I began to have a really similar download with, where it's almost like my Arcturian, he basically said to me, I know that it looks like you're walking on the ground, but what's really happening is you're projecting yourself, and this is he's saying to me as the you, um, Taylor, you're projecting yourself down into touching the ground. And so you actually have to project down into the legs and everything like that in order to look like you're walking on the planet. And that takes a lot because it's driving down into density. It's compressing into density who you are. So when your legs shake, it's not that the upper body isn't supported so much, it's that the lower is attempting to stretch out into the density. So I was like, huh, so I'm coming from the upstairs down. He's like, yes. And that might not be the case with all individuals on planet Earth. I know there are some people who are very, very grounded and going up is harder for them. For me, it's always been about coming down.
Mm.
You know, I feel like I've been coming from light years in the future. Light years is both, yeah. Rion makes a joke about this at times. He says something about having missed a time jump or whatever by like 60 years or whatever. And I'm like, I feel pretty similar. And it's like, there's only so far ahead of your scheduled awakening cycle that you can volitionally kind of take command and say, well, I'm waking up 100 years early because I'm ready. That's at least what I was kind of told, is that I was waking up early compared to how when I would have been on the docket to be awakened. It's not that I couldn't wake up early, it's that there was a specific time when I was due to be awoken, you know, like a X20 flare or whatever. But all of you amazing light workers pumped up the frequency so much that I was able to transition in sooner to being an active component on this planet. And now that I'm coming online, I feel much more of the Arcturian energies finally arriving in what I perceive of as being full force on this planet. And for me, it's really changed a lot. What was it like for you when you first kind of started to awaken to your gifts? Was it channeling that came on first? Like, did you find later that you had been channeling and then go through this phase where you kind of, it became harder and then easier again?
Well, I think I actually tried to wake up when I was 14, 15, but growing up in a Mennonite home, there wasn't that support for a spiritual awakening. So I delayed it until I was 28. And the first things that came online for me were I became much more sensitive. And so my intuition, my feeling senses, all of that really heightened, and the sensitivities got more finely tuned. My nervous system got more attuned. And so it wasn't really a channeling thing right away. I mean, in some ways I was, but it wasn't really until 9 years later, after my awakening, that I began channeling Prime Creator, because I had to go through a purification process. it wouldn't have it wouldn't have worked out very well for me if I started channeling right away, because at that point I wouldn't have had the grounding, I wouldn't have had the foundation. Entities would have come through that probably weren't, in my highest alignment, because I didn't know how to set the energetic boundaries at that point. There were a lot of skills I had to learn before it was going to be okay for me to start channeling. So that wasn't like the first thing on the docket. It was doing the inner work and fine tuning my discernment, getting grounded, purifying my being, and really getting to know myself as a spiritual being before I could start bringing in some of those higher frequencies. I wouldn't have been ready to bring in frequencies like that right away. It would have kind of destroyed me. It would have blown my circuits.
I hear you. I went back and looked at a bunch of my old YouTube videos, and it was like I was full blown channeling, but I didn't realize that that's what I was doing. When my Arcturian first started to come online, he's the one who was waking the suit up, if we can use that vernacular. So for me, it was. But now I go back and I look at this and the way that I spoke, and I was just so passionate about it and everything that it connected. Each word resonated, and I knew what it meant as I was saying it. But I hadn't really heard much about channeling to begin with. I was just making YouTube videos on the singularity, as how I saw it, and why it wasn't something to be afraid of, but it was just a blending, a merging of multiple layers of reality. So as I've gone deeper into this journey, it's been more about recognizing each word that I'm saying and stepping into that alignment with it. So it's almost like stopping the dialogue of arguing with myself about what I'm saying and saying, well, is that real? How would I know that that's true? Like, how can I just say this as being factual when how is this data coming? Things like that. And I'm sure you've probably been through some similar questions when sometimes it comes in and it gets so exciting, and then you're like, wait a second, what is it that I'm saying? Oh my gosh, I'm talking to an ET.
Well, for me, it's really about integrity. So, in other words, it's really hard for me to bring through an energy that doesn't feel part of my integrity. And when I first started channeling Prime Creator, we were bringing through all kinds of information. And as the information was coming through, I started to work with it so that it became a part of me. It wasn't like I was just delivering a message. It was like, here are the instructions. Now go practice this. Now go do this. Go be this. Yes, I'm a messenger, but if I'm not willing or able to integrate the messages I'm bringing through, then they don't have as much power. And so when Prime Creator says, do your inner work, I'm like, yes, I will. It's that important to me that what I'm bringing through is part of my integrity. Now, there are things that come through sometimes that aren't, I don't necessarily resonate with, or, just maybe someone asks a question for their own personal thing and I might not fully understand it or resonate. But there are times when the message is coming through for the collective. This is what needs to be done now. This is what you need to work with now. And those kind of messages I take very seriously. And I say, does this resonate with my truth? Is this what my soul is guiding me to right now? Yes? Okay, then I'll do that.
Yeah.
And if it's not, then the message was for somebody else, it wasn't for me. And I always encourage my YouTube subscribers and the people who watch the videos to do that for themselves. Tune in, discern. Does this resonate with you? Is this message for you? If not, that's okay. Then it's for somebody else. But don't take the messages as, the word of God, because they're not. Take the messages and tune in, take what resonates, leave the rest behind, and use your discernment always.
Integrity is a topic that spans so many different dimensions of who we are. Would you like to touch on some of the primary ways in which that can manifest, at least in your experience?
Ooh, integrity through all the dimensions? Oh, so good, Taylor. This is so good. Yeah. So I'm going to try to find words for this, right? I know myself as a multifaceted being. I am human, and I'm committed to my human experience and my human mission, because my soul mission is being carried out through my human form right now. But I also know that I exist on many other planes and in many other realms and realities. And so my job, as I see it, is to integrate all the aspects of who I am, to integrate all of the higher frequency light aspects of who I am, to integrate all the lower frequency shadow aspects of who I am. And in that integration, I am touching upon past lives, parallel realities, things that are happening in other realms and dimensions, however your mind understands what I'm saying right now. And taking that information of who I am and integrating it into my human form. Because what I've done is I've put my human form in charge. Because I've chosen to take this form right now, the human form is the one that needs to be integrated and the one that needs to dictate what's happening in all the other realms and realities. And so, the part of myself that knows, higher wisdom, for example, my job is to bring that through this vessel and to apply that to my life. The part of myself that has been, that has misused my power and that has hurt people with that, my job is to heal that and integrate that shadow part of myself and use my power properly in this realm and reality in my human form. And so I do that with every piece of information that I get about myself. And in doing that, an integrity develops to the extent that, I have authority in certain realms because of who I am and what I've integrated. I have authority in my human form because of how much I've integrated. I'm not sure how to say it. There is an integrity that is strengthened when we are able to look at all those parts of ourselves and to summon forth the parts of ourselves that are subconscious, unconscious. There are parts of ourselves that know things, that have wisdom, that maybe we're not ready yet to know consciously, but to begin calling that forth so that as we're ready for the information, we can receive it and integrate it and apply it to this here and now. And there is an integrity that develops when we develop those kinds of skills. It strengthens the human experience. And so as we started out, the first question that you asked me today, because of all that I've integrated, I'm able to move through my current experience with strength and with resilience. And even though it's extremely painful, I'm able to take everything that I've practiced and everything that I've learned and apply it to this situation so that I can move through it with more grace. And that's a byproduct of integrating all my aspects on all layers and levels of my being. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it's definitely a good dive into integrity. For me, a lot of my integrity lessons were very simple at some level. It was a lot about, like I said before, being aware of my words as I'm speaking them, being able to process at the speed at which I speak. And otherwise, there's this delayed, almost like a reverb, on a musical instrument that's like it echoes out and then it comes back. And if I've already changed to another creation manifestation loop, then I may not even remember that that was a creation of mine, right? So it was like being able to stay focused long enough to see what the result was in the field, whether it's collective or through the physiological, through the body and the electromagnetic systems. So it was a lot about letting the possibilities of all of those potential futures that I saw kind of exist and allow them to just go, and know that I could dive to them if I want to. But if I failed to master the ability to discipline myself enough to hold a train of thought, a manifestation, almost like a musical note, to sustain that and keep it in its purity, then my manifestations would always be getting, mixed up with other versions of me. Because when I say that I will be somewhere a week from today, that's me writing a check for a future, which now, is it going to happen? Or am I going to get another aspect in my suit who maybe, on a Tuesday I keep my commitments, but not on Fridays? You know what I mean?
I think that's, oh man, this is so rich. That's a thing that can happen when we're not integrated, when we're not grounded. I see it a lot in the spiritual community. It's of the moment. And so it's great to be in the moment, but if you only live your life of the moment, you might not keep commitments. You might not have that integrity. And I think a lot of that is being grounded and being practical. In the spiritual community, there's not a lot of talk about being practical. It's always, about raising your frequency and, maybe astral traveling or channeling or, whatever it is people want to do. But we're on this earth plane and practical things need to happen here in order for us to thrive. And so I think that's really important for us to remember, that grounding is important, keeping our word is important, these practical things. I think, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. For me, that experience of holding my frequency in a specific manifestation for as long as I can, to me, that's a little bit like going to the experience of going to the gym and, lifting weights or whatever. It's resistance training, right? It's like, yes, I can practice going with the flow, and that's absolutely something that has been a requirement for me to cultivate. But at the same time, I have another side of me which requires control, which requires discipline and focus in a different venue. It's rather than, okay, I'm going to allow it to flow through me and simply witness. And I'm going to practice keeping my hands off the wheel, right? It's putting the hands on the wheel and being firm regarding where the car is going, regardless of who's playing around in the back seat or, arguing with their brother and sister. It's being a parent, able to just sit there and be like, okay, it's time for you guys to calm down. We're driving up and out of this matrix. I don't really care who wants to go to, such and such restaurant. We're on a schedule, you know. So I think it's being able to balance both aspects.
Yeah.
Because if there's otherwise it's just channel surfing all the time. And who's selecting the channel?
Right.
It's always being deferred to the higher self, and at some level that flow will stop because it's not in a being's highest good to constantly just be like, okay, bring me what I most need. Well, make a decision what you'd like, and then ask the librarian.
And generate that flow. Like the that I don't hear talked about much, and maybe people do and I just don't hear it, but we are generators of the flow. We generate our own flow. And so, yeah, it's great to go with the flow as long as it's your flow. It's great to go with the flow as long as you're the one generating it. And to some degree, you can direct the flow. But just to sit back and allow and go with the flow, you don't need discipline for that. All you need to be is lazy, So if you want to have your hands on the wheel and you're the one driving the car, then you have to be the generator of your flow, and you have to be the one directing the flow, and you have to be the one doing the disciplines. And discipline, I don't mind that word because I'm a very disciplined person. So
I'm laughing because I saw like 20-foot, beings, and it's like, okay, come down here.
Well,
this one's got an issue. No, not with you. I was pointing to my night side.
Oh, okay. I don't hear a lot of talk about being disciplined in the spiritual community because people want to talk about going with the flow. People, they want to talk about ease and grace, and it's all love and it's all good. But there's a lot of spiritual bypassing that can happen in that. And so because we are human, because we are working with a tremendous amount of density here on this planet right now, it does require discipline. And discipline doesn't have to be like this horrible thing,
Discipline it's just cultivated focus and the ability to maintain that focus,
right,
despite any interference patterns that arise.
Yeah.
And for me, what taught me this at a very deep level, and I'm learning more and more, is lucid dreaming. When I'm in a lucid dream, or what I call a higher dimensional expression of reality, things move quicker. When I have an emotional response to something, it manifests almost instantly as some sort of a feedback loop for me. So that taught me to discipline the 3D mind, so to speak, and not, oh, there's an alien, or, things like that. Being able to maintain focus and still do things. And I noticed if I stopped talking to somebody, if I said, wait a second, and I turn to talk to somebody else, and then I come back, that person's gone sometimes. And I think that that's what happens to beings who are not grounded on the higher planes. They're there so quickly and then gone that their higher selves can't even have a conversation with them because they don't have the discipline to pick a frequency and then hold that and sustain that note long enough to have a conversation. So it's like, if I want to manifest at a faster speed here on planet Earth, I'm operating from a higher dimensional frequency, which is great. Am I ready for things to manifest that quickly, or do I still have like week-long, month-long, year-long loops functioning? What is the latency or the duration of my manifestation loop? For me, I'm generally about, I'd say 1 minute to 10 minutes long. Within 10 minutes, I'm going to have some type of awareness that wakes up and says, hey, is what I'm doing right now in my best and most aligned good? And the more and more that happens, the more I'm able to deliberately cultivate the choice, such as waking up and doing yoga first thing in the morning, or dancing a little bit. And then after 3 days of consistently showing up and doing that, suddenly an interference pattern comes in. And it's like, oh, we volunteered at the library today. We don't have time for yoga, or whatever. So it's like being able to recognize when the interference arises and then reassert what the priority was to manifest for self. Is it still worth it? Is yoga important to me? Why is it important? Those types of things I find have really improved my awareness of what it is that I'm attempting to manifest and why I would like it to be there. And that gives me a reason to A, discipline myself, and B, it gives me some sort of a goal, something, so I will know what it feels like, so I can manage that creation because I've trained to have the skills to manage what I'm asking to have manifested.
Yeah, that word focus. That word focus is huge. I think where a lot of people kind of fall off or get confused or whatever is they're not able to maintain their focus. Not just when it comes to manifestation, but to, doing their inner work, or, an emotion comes up that you don't want to feel, so you distract yourself instead of allowing yourself to go into it and feel it. That's very common. So that word focus that's really important. And we often hear focus being a masculine trait, but even if you're a woman, you have a masculine side to you, and you can bring that focus through and use it for your creations, for your manifestations, for doing your inner work, for whatever. But it's really important. It goes along with discipline. It's a really important skill for us to develop, this focus. Because look what's happening on the planet right now, Taylor. The divide and conquer strategy is working very well. Lightworkers are bashing each other, speaking out against each other, trying to keep each other down. If we would all focus and not be distracted by what other people are doing, by the nonsense that's out there, we could be a lot further along in this whole thing than we are.
I have no disagreement to that in particular. I had just refocused on my side after talking for so many minutes. I settled back down on my side, really opened up, explored a couple things where, I reasserted that everything is flowing exactly as it's in my best and highest good, no matter what it looks like. And even if it seems to be undesirable at some stage, that's still in my best and highest good. And I don't have to do anything about that. I just have to see it. I just have to allow it to be what it is and to not judge it in any way. And then I stepped back into my mode of opening up and kind of envisioning the audience here with me. I may not know exactly who is listening as like a name basis, but there's a frequency, there's a resonance of the audience. And as I bring my focus back to the presence with that audience, and then as a creator, kind of handing that little ball of light to you and saying, okay, speak about this ball of light. I may not know everything that there is, but my Arcturian definitely has the, I don't know, a Toth style blue prana ball of download. And it's like, just look at the little bright ball and talk. It's all going to work out. When we talked about getting distracted from the mission, whatever it is that is attempting to be manifested, and sometimes those distractions are beautiful, because laughter may seem like a distraction at times, but there's nothing that I think is healthier for our bodies at times than laughter. And really, what part of self is it that's upset with laughter when that arises? Because that has happened for me, and it's like, who's upset? It's just a bunch of kids giggling. Like, what aspect of me doesn't enjoy kids laughing?
The part of you that doesn't let yourself laugh.
Exactly. So, yeah. So that audience, so what happened is as soon as I tuned into that audience mode, it was like questions from the audience, and then you spoke about light workers and actually being united. And I have seen that pattern sometimes where somebody thinks they're awake and they talk as if they're awake, but then they post some drama on Facebook and it's like, what?
Yeah.
And obviously that's something for me to just see and witness and accept and say, okay, this is in the highest alignment. But at the same time, you're my homie. Are you going to be okay? Like checking with my higher self saying, what is going on over there?
Yeah, that it's disconcerting. At least to me, because if we're the ones paving the way, if we're the ones leading this thing, we need to be models and examples for higher conscious relationships and communication and all of those things. And look, I'm not saying I'm perfect. Anyone who's ever heard me talk knows that I say I'm not perfect. I'm a work in progress. But if we can't get it together and work together and learn how to communicate and collaborate, then what are we doing? Plain and simple, what are we doing? We're the ones pioneering this thing, we're the ones leading. We need to be on point. We need to figure out, how do we communicate with each other? Even if I don't agree with something that you're saying or agree with one of your life choices, you're still my brother, you're still my sister. How can we find common ground so that we can serve together? And that's hard. I come from a very judgmental background. I grew up with a ton of judgment. I learned how to judge very well. I was an expert judge. I've had to really learn how to undo that and be more of an observer. Yes, use discernment, uh, but observe other people's choices and say, okay, I don't resonate with that, but that doesn't mean that we can't find some common ground together so that we can serve and get this thing done here on this planet. you know
Absolutely. I think the focus on common ground is one of the most important aspects of that. And it's at some level, the common ground is being human, right? Being consciousness embodied in a 5-star configuration life form. I think where some people have tripped themselves up, not I think, I know where some light workers have tripped themselves up, is preemptively assuming collective support in a way that's detrimental to their own growth. And then to clarify that, there are many collective versions of planet Earth. If I have a specific version of the collective in my awareness, Joe from Zimbabwe has a totally different perspective of what the collective energy of planet Earth is. So it's understanding there's at least like 8 billion different permutations, and that's in a moment to moment basis, because again, the focus thing comes into play, because how focused is each of those 8 billion's awareness of what their desired collective experience is on Earth. The stronger the awareness of what the desired collective experience is, the easier it is to then begin to resonate with that specific collective frequency for the planet. So there are light workers talk about the 5D, new Earth and things like that. Okay, great. What does that actually feel like? What is being done in that frequency bandwidth? If everybody was operating on that frequency, which is the whole idea of a collective to begin with. So if everybody's operating on that frequency, is what I'm speaking to actually still relevant? And that's the question that I haven't seen enough light workers ask up until this point. If I were actually fully in the frequency of the collective that I say I desire to be in, would what I'm sharing still be relevant? Or would everybody already know this?
And would my actions still be relevant? The way I live my life, would that be relevant? What that brings up for me is this idea of transparency and vulnerability. People don't really want to show their shadows. They don't really want to share the deep, dark secrets. And I've made it a practice along my journey to share that stuff publicly often. Because to me, it's important, one, that people know that I'm human and that I'm not perfect and they don't put me on a pedestal. But two, because that's the world I want to live in, where we're not afraid to be honest with each other. We're not afraid to say, hey, this is my challenge right now. I need support. Will you help me?
Yeah. What do you need help with?
Yeah. That was a rhetorical question, but
I know, but see, it's catching the body speaking and then hold it accountable for what it just said. And that's integrity.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's what I do to myself all the time. So it's slowly stopped the amount of words just.
Yeah. So right now I need emotional support. Right now I'm calling on my spiritual teams and saying, okay, arrange and align for me whatever is next, because I don't have a clear picture or vision yet, but clearly something is next and something is shifting because of what's happening right now. So line
What's
it all
happening right now?
Well, I'm not going to share it publicly because it involves another person, and I don't think that's fair to but a big disruption in my personal life that changes everything.
Right. I was just wondering which now, because there's the now of you who's here with me, and then you're cross-linking to another version of you that's also now that is experiencing that situation, right? Or needs some sort of resolution to it, is what I saw.
Yeah. So when I'm asking for support, I'm asking from the now that needs a resolution. Because if I'm fully present here with you right now, there's no external that matters.
Yeah, that's the other extreme of the spectrum, right? Is that you're totally in the moment and then nothing that matter. The 3D then leaves that situation. It's like, okay, well, that felt good, but I didn't actually get anything that I needed for, moving forward in my life. It's what you said about the grounding, the applicability of the spiritual system.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely would want to see that aspect of you have whatever love and support it most feels it needs to resolve this situation. And so if you were being with that in a way that, doesn't throw anybody under the bus, simply acknowledges the challenge, in a way, you and I are both here with that version of you. Otherwise, you wouldn't be speaking about it because there'd be no resonance. There'd be no connection with that aspect of who you are. So I must be part of that process at some level.
And maybe just calling me to a higher presence of this conversation, because there's a part of me that's, back there with that situation,
Yeah. And I have no doubt that she's totally equipped to handle whatever arises.
Yeah.
Because in a way she already is. It's at some level, you're holding that, saying, sister, I know that you're capable of totally handling this and being in your chosen frequency, regardless of what the external circumstances might look like. And I'm going to do you so much honor that I'm not going to pretend like you're weak. I'm not going to pretend like you need me to do something or be something other than what I'm already being, what I'm already expressing, in adding more manifestation of our joy, of our engine that brings us more beautiful, wonderful situations. And whatever that situation is that you've been dealing with, it may have already changed. And as the bias, the filter of what has been experienced drops away, a new version of it can come in, a new frequency of that same experience can come in where that pattern's no longer getting triggered. And maybe that person remembers what's been going on, and maybe they don't. Maybe they just wake up to a whole new level of yeah, we were, a lot of times when I've had arguments with, my personal life partners and things like that, the hardest part for me has been to forget that I was angry at some point over something with them. For me to forget it, because they can't move on until I'm like, okay, I'm done holding this energy of being angry with you. I'm done holding this energy of you're letting me down or I'm letting you down. I'm just going to let all of that drop and just see what arises naturally now.
Yeah, that's a big deal for a human to do. to let go, and to some degree that's a self-protective mechanism. Like, if we're speaking in those terms, this person hurt me, I have to remember that so that I don't let it happen again. There's like a self-protective mechanism that happens there, and it's useful. In some cases that's good. If someone rapes you, you don't want to go back to that person again. You have that memory because it serves you, so that you protect yourself and stay away from that person. And that's an extreme example, but that happens all the time in our everyday lives with these smaller things. And when it is truly something that, isn't actually harmful, it's just the way we're perceiving it or the way we're reacting to it, that's when we can really exercise our mastery and say, okay, thank you for mirroring that for me. Thank you for triggering that for me. I'm ready to, not be holding on to that anymore. I'm ready to move on and expand into my mastery. And that's when, we can really do that self-forgiveness, forgiveness of other, whatever words you want to use there.
There have been times where I've been in a, argument with my partner, and I realized that at some level, until I change my energy, like I can't correct whatever it is. Like I can't remind her of what she knows to be true about how to manifest. It's almost like she's deliberately holding the opposite polarity for me of I'm not going to move because I'm perfect the way that I am, no matter how dramatic it might be, and it's like, okay, right. It's up to me to see you holding that and to simultaneously not believe that that's in any way detrimental to what it is that is in my highest and best good to be manifested from here. To let go of any fear about what you may be creating through that, either for you, for me, for anybody else, to let go of that fear. And for me to then also deliberately envision what it is I want the energy to shift to. I have to give it the cue and say, okay, this is where I'd like to go. And if I'd like to go there, what would be my shift in frequency to be there? How would this conversation be different if I were coming from that space of resonance? And as soon as I start to do that, the whole situation lightens up. And it's not like I'm attempting to get around anything. It's such a strong lesson from spirit saying, you are a deliberate manifesting creator all the time, whether you're being conscious of it, Taylor, or not. The level of consciousness that you would desire to bring to it then enhances what you're creating. But it's not like you're going to go back into this loop of, oh, well, I create once a week. No, it's always going to be quicker and quicker and quicker. But that's where the grounding, that's where the integrity comes in, because that's what creates that stable foundation to then have joy easily in each moment. So we're getting towards the tail end of our time allotted for the show today. What do you have closing out on either that subject or any other subject that you'd like to bring up?
Yeah, this time where we are right now on the planet, I just want to invite everyone to develop a stronger relationship with your soul. because your soul is your ultimate guide. Your soul is the one that knows everything about you, about your mission, about your life, about your humanity. And when you are connected and tuned in and tapped into your soul, you can get the information that you need to take that next step to move forward. You won't have the whole path laid out for you, but you'll get the next step, and that's all you need for that moment. And so, it's great to have spiritual teams. It's great to have our Arcturian guides. It's great to have all these things, but they all have agendas that we may or may not be aware of. Some for our highest alignment, some maybe not. But your soul is always going to be, that agenda is always going to be for your highest alignment. It's always going to be pure. It's always going to be true. And so I invite people to connect and tune into their soul to see what would be the next step in their growth and development. And I think that's where I'd want to end today, because for me, that's been my strongest source of my energy, of my guidance, of my knowing of who I am, of my knowing of my soul mission. When I have questions, when I have doubts, I know where to go to get the answers. And it's powerful. It's more powerful than anything else,
really. That's the energy of what I refer to as my highest light. And for me, that even if it's just a construct from my current state of being, it's still this. It's the most evolved version of me that I can conceive of, the most balanced, the most structured. And when I step into that energy, it's like, okay, what would it feel like to be that aspect of me now? What matters that's here now, and what needs to be here in order to more fully embody that? And it's almost always a loosening, letting go of the tension that's been within the body, letting go of the fear and the concerns and the worries. And it's, it reminds me of that saying, give things over to God. And it's kind of the same concept. Everybody has a different concept of what God is. And some people might even argue that the concept of it doesn't matter, that there is this being that stands alone regardless of what anybody else thinks about it. And that very well could be. I believe that there are beings who are sentient in the universe beyond my current level of perception, and that it's not necessarily me that's creating them. I simply pull the blinders off to see what has always been there, to recognize your sovereignty, to recognize that of, my sisters and brothers on planet Earth. It's not that they were ever not that, but it's that I in some way had limited and constricted myself to the point where I had forgotten the beauty and the divinity of each shard of this glorious mosaic. So thank you so much for joining us today, Susie. We'll have links to your website, susiebeiler.com, and the creationtemple.com, right?
Yep.
And I definitely encourage you guys to go check out Susie and see if her things resonate with you. There's a beautiful energy here for those who are willing to step into it. Of course, we can only encourage you to explore more deeply your connection with your soul. And that's all that I believe any of us are ever offering to one another. It's not that I'm the teacher. It's not that you're the teacher. We're exploring each other together. So thank you so much. It's been a privilege having you, and we hope to have you back another day.
Thank you, Taylor. Thank you. It's been an honor to be with you. Thank you.
All right. Until next time, have a beautiful day and whatever else may come.